First of all, we're often cautious, which is not a bad thing for conservatives. I think we don't need to rush to every new idea as soon as it emerges. I got involved in this in part because Chuck Colson, who had been in the Nixon White House and ended up going to jail after Watergate, really, I think, had a profound religious conversion experience and helped develop an entire approach to faith-based prisons. And in Texas in particular, they took to heart what Paul Colson was doing, which was trying to genuinely change the heart of the prisoner. And they had remarkable breakthroughs in having far fewer people go back to prison a second time. So the recidivism rate, as it's called, dropped very dramatically, specifically in the prisons that had adopted this faith-based approach. Pat Nolan came along through a very similar experience and really became, in my mind, Chuck Colson's partner. And I've worked with Pat, I guess, for almost 30 years now. And he developed the whole concept of right on crime. And it was sort of a double entendre of saying you could be conservative and you could also be doing the right things on crime. And ironically, conservative governors in particular, I think of Governor Perry, who did an amazing job in Texas, but also Governor Deal of my home state, who happened to have a son who was a drug court judge. And he really carried his father to a deeper appreciation of the need to help people be prepared to re-enter society. And I think he really convinced him both at a Christian, human level and at a practical level in terms of the cost of the program. Something which you're dealing with in Tennessee, where the latest numbers were that it cost about $23,000 a year to keep a prisoner, and we spend $10,000 a year on students in high school. Now, there's clearly something wrong with our structure here when we're basically have 2.5 students in each cell rather than having them in school. And I was one of those, like, I was very tough on crime. In fact, I would say I helped make a major mistake in the 90s because we inappropriately used much tougher standards for crack cocaine than for regular cocaine, and had a devastating effect on the black community in ways that I look back on as one of the great policy mistakes that I participated in my career. And you began to realize that, and I want to draw a distinction here. This is not a George Soros elect district attorneys who don't believe in crime, who refuse to prosecute, et cetera, the kind of thing which is destroying San Francisco and in Philadelphia has led the Democratic Party to repudiate the current district attorney because he won't prosecute criminals. This is an effort to say something very different. One, there are violent people who should be kept away from the rest of society, and but it's a very small number compared to the total prison population. Two, it's both inhumane and dumb to have somebody under your control fail to teach them, fail to prepare them, put them back on the street where the only thing they learn is how to be a smarter criminal, and then be shocked that they show back up in prison. It makes for a society which is unsafe and a society which is both wasting lives and wasting money. So around the country, we saw very solid conservatives. I mean, it'd be very hard to argue that either Nathan Deal or Rick Perry are not absolutely solid conservatives. But they looked at this both as a values question about human beings, as a financial question about the budget, and as a practical long-term approach that said, does it work? And what we have found in the states that adopt this, and I commend you, Governor, for bringing your personal experience in prison and the testimony you had in prison, the people you worked with in prison, having the courage to bring it into the governor's office to propose serious reforms, and then to get people from around the country who've been doing this for a long time. The fact is that over 90% of the people who are in prison will get out. The question is, will they get out better prepared to be in society, better prepared to be reintegrated, better prepared to earn a living, better prepared to take care of their family, or will they get out having been brutalized and isolated and having no capacity to earn a living and having no capacity to take care of their family? And I think true conservatism has to take the position that we're in fact going to help people. And one of the folks, and this has been a very bipartisan issue, and I give President Trump a lot of credit because he reached out to people like Van Jones and Jessica Jackson. He brought people into the White House, and I know Brooke played a real role in this. And the result was ultimately he even had Mrs. Alice Johnson, who herself had been in prison, an African American woman at the National Convention, introducing his daughter, who then introduced him. I mean, a fairly high profile position that you would not have associated with the Republican Party 20 years ago. But I think Trump got it in his heart that people deserved a second chance. And that when it was possible, he wanted to help them have that second chance. So you've seen a migration. The last thing I would say is, I think that it's very profoundly conservative to think about having both a reentry program that reduces recidivism, having diversion programs, and this is where Governor Deal really, I think, had an epiphany from his son, who was a drug court judge, and to recognize that we want to plan from the day you enter prison how you're going to leave prison. Now, again, I'm distinguishing. If you're a hardcore, if you're a rapist, if you're an armed robber, if you're a murderer, then protecting society from you is a very different question. And those people ought to be in separate facilities where they can't infect the people who've had modest crimes but now are put into, in effect, a university for crime. And so I would separate out the violent people, and I'd be very tough about violent people. And as I said earlier, I disagree totally with the Soros model that you can steal $900 and we won't consider it a crime, which is what's going on in San Francisco, where one major drug chain has closed all 10 of their stores because they just can't operate. So, Governor, I commend what you're doing. I hope that the legislature will look very seriously. I think it is the essence of conservatism to adopt long-term policies that are better for the human being, better for the budget, and in the long run lead to a safer and healthier society. And you're doing exactly the right thing.